Welcome back. Now, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has made headlines following a landmark recovery of duplexes and apartments located on plot 109 cadastral zone C09 in the upscale Lokogoma district of Abuja. The recovery, which culminated in the forfeiture of these properties to the federal government, has been hailed and described by many as a significant achievement in the Commission's ongoing war against corruption. In a press statement by the EFCC's head of media and publicity, DEJI360, the anti-graft agency disclosed that actionable intelligence led to investigations into the estate and that the forfeiture followed civil proceedings under Section 17 of the Advanced Fee Fraud Act. Now, for context, this legal provision allows for action in rem. That's a process now targeting property rather than individuals, particularly in cases of unclaimed assets. However, despite the widespread commendation, the EFCC is equally facing criticism from many Nigerians for not disclosing the identity of the owner of the asset, even though there are rumors out there as to who the owners are. Now, according to citizens, the lack of transparency now in such high-profile case now only confirms the perception that the fight against corruption in Nigeria is somewhat selective and politically motivated. In response, the Commission maintains that its actions are grounded in law and that it must follow due process in all its investigations. Oyewale says the EFCC criminal investigation into the matter remains ongoing, stating that revealing the names of individuals without direct evidence connecting them to the property's title documents would be premature and unprofessional. The seizure of the 753 properties is undoubtedly a massive accomplishment for the EFCC, and it comes at a time when the Nigerian public has become increasingly doubtful of the country's fight against corruption. Let's discuss all of this further. Now being joined on the program by the chairman of Header Resource Center, who joins us, of course, from Accra. That's a city now in Ghana. Also joining us from another part of Lagos is Debo Adeniro, who is the executive director, Center for Anti-Corruption and Open Leadership, CACOL. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Let's start off with the EFCC not disclosing the identity now of the owner or owners of this property. Let me start with you, Lanre. What do you make of that and the excuse that the EFCC has given?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, legally speaking and with the procedure, if it is forfeited through the civil forfeiture process under the Section 7 of the EFCC, then it allows the commission to proceed with that forfeiture process without necessarily bothering to get the actual owner into court. And if that process is also concluded till it is forfeited, then it is also allowed for the commission to, because what the commission is telling the court simply is that we don't know the owner, but we suspect that these are proceeds of crime. And the legitimate owner will be expected to come and defend it. So in the absence of where there's nobody who had gone forward to lay claim to the ownership, then it is assumed that the owner is unknown. But it is also supposed to be in the ultimate benefit interest of the commission to have also informed the public, those who were suspected, because I am certain that there would be some leaks that must have assisted the commission in establishing the existence of those assets. And the public will really want to know. It is not impossible that the commission would know who are the real owners of the property. I wouldn't know what would be the reason or justification why that was not made public. If there are things that the commission is still working on that might assume would jeopardize the process of investigation. But I think it would have been also worked in the ultimate interest of the commission to have disclosed the suspected owners after the final, especially after the final forfeiture.
Let me get your own take on this, Mr. Adeniro. You look at the way this has played out. Are you shocked by this discovery? Because, 753 properties, duplexes. It's something that I find difficult to even wrap my head around.
Well, I struggle to get your question, but based on the fragmented aspect of it that I heard, I believe that the ownership of the humongous number of duplexes that were found in that cadastral zone estate couldn't have been there by magic. Somebody must have contracted it out. People must have worked on it. Some papers will have been obtained, no matter how fraudulent it is. Those who approve of the buildings will have names behind the registration or whatever entries they make in their books. The town planners will have done something about it, given approval for such estate to be built where it is. Those who electrified it, those who installed those electric poles, they have their contract papers and must have carried some name. Then, it is just begging the question to say that disclosure of the name may jeopardize the investigation of the EFCC. They are only maybe playing to the gallery. Of course, a number of, somebody's name had been banded, and we know it may not be far from the truth. But then the truth again is that the EFCC doesn't have to hide proceeds of their success, because it's a success story that they are telling the world that they have achieved. So why is it that they will now cover it? If they have achieved that success at one level, it doesn't mean that they cannot investigate the same person if it is not on the same crime. And besides, we learned that they went to court. They had a temporary forfeiture before they got the permanent forfeiture. Who was it that they took to court? But even if they didn't take anybody to court under their Section 7, because even this, what the Section 7 says is that for people living above their legitimate means. So if somebody has gotten such an asset outside what ordinarily you should be able to afford, then they are backed by the act that set them up by taking on the gauntlet. Let us know, name them, shame them, okay? That is what will lead us into shunning them.
Let me come to you, Lanre. Tell me, are you shocked by this development? Because just as I said, it's something that is difficult to understand when you consider the scale of the property involved here.
No, it is extremely difficult for me to be surprised because there's been so many allegations that were all over there in the public against Emefiele, who has been fingered as the owner of those property. Part of the thing is you can also imagine the number of numbers. If you actually imagine the number of cars that Emefiele already bought for his presidential ambition at that time, and if you also look at the recklessness with which contracts were awarded, and at the same time, Emefiele was using the dollar and the round tripping to settle a whole.
But let's be clear. Let's be clear on something. The ownership has not been officially confirmed anyway.
Well, it is already like Mr. Adelino said, somebody has been fingered. So it is not about, he would have to come out and say he's not the owner, but he has not also denied it. So the fact that he has not denied it and the EFCC have not also said that he's not the owner, so we still assume he's the owner until we have any evidence contrary to that. So it is not surprising with the level of recklessness that we had under Emefiele, and also quite a number of revelations that you're seeing in the prosecution that EFCC has also instituted against him, to see that he has committed so much level of atrocities today.
Now, this also raises an important question. Let me continue, Mr. Adeno. This raises an important question now. Should the EFCC's focus now be on, recovery of looted assets, stolen assets now, or stolen money or whatever? That should the EFCC focus more on recovery rather than, prosecution, if you like, that drags on almost forever in courts?
Well, let them recover first. Let them recover. At some point, the Center for Anti-Corruption and Open Leadership urged the EFCC to go after those abandoned properties in Abuja and several other cities in Nigeria, and let them prove that they are the owner or they are not the owner. They should do the opposite of what is popular. That is, they should prove that they are not guilty. They say that people should be presumed innocent until they are proven guilty. Anybody that they find has accumulated so much that is beyond what he could have acquired legitimately should be taken as being guilty until the contrary is proven. That was why when we wrote a petition to the EFCC against one former president, that if he had lived for 8 years and is earning 3 million naira every month for that 80 years, he wouldn't have been able to accumulate as much as 6 billion naira with which he constructed a presidential library for the president, for Nigeria, before it was converted to his own assets. So some of these things embolden these official looters. Several of them. Look at Desani Madueke, the former central bank governor. Said that she went away with $20 billion. And one former president, also wasted more than $16 billion on what they call electricity, national integrated power project that we never enjoy. Now, these people are going, they are getting out of all of these free. And the EFCC have a slogan for this year's anti-corruption day. That is, we have to lead the youth into how not to commit corruption crime. But if the youth are looking at their adults that are going free, that are not facing consequences of corruption crimes, that will incentivize them to commit corruption crime. And they will know that if they have so much money, if they want to loot, they will loot so big that they will be able to afford the best of lawyers, either to frustrate the case out of court, or to frustrate the agency, or to intimidate the investigators or prosecutors out of the case, so that they will abandon the case midway. And most of those that have been convicted, even the past governors, Joshua Dariye, Dipriye Alamisa, Jolly Yame, all of them had been pardoned. Why should the system that is desirous of cleansing our polity of corruption will engage in state pardon for those who have made our lives impossible?
Okay.
That is one of the reasons why some of us are not enthusiastic at the recovery of this property. But then let them do the bit they can do. Let us see how far they can go. Even if the state will return the property to the owner by the time another sheriff comes to town, let us see that was stolen.
Let me come to you, Mr. Suraj. Do you think this strategy of going for recovery is effective and may prove, probably better than this long-drawn prosecutions that we've seen over the years?
Yes, it's definitely going to be. And interestingly, we've actually been one of the advocates for that long ago before now. In fact, we've written several petitions to the law enforcement agencies identifying some of these assets that we felt the agencies are duty bound to actually pursue them for recovery. So seeing this happening now, for us, it is an interesting and most effective process that would really disgorge, the suspect and the politically exposed person from the proceeds of their criminal activities. One of the things that would really dry them up is when these assets are forfeited to the government, and that would also reduce the capacity for them to deploy those assets and resources to fighting the government and the law enforcement agencies in court. So if we're able to get the government and the law enforcement agencies to vigorously pursue this process of the civil assets forfeiture, then we're very much certain that we will have things changing in the system. The other thing that the law enforcement agencies will really also need to do is to start encouraging citizens to go back to the era of effective whistleblowing, where people can volunteer information to the anti-corruption agencies on some of these assets that are lingering all over the places. There are quite a lot of that in Abuja that you see around, and they can easily be recovered by the law enforcement agencies.
And very quickly now, if you were advising the EFCC and the government, what do you think they should do with these 753 properties?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the. Oh, sorry, I don't know if that was for me or Mr. Adeniran.
Go on.
Yeah, I mean, this is the area where you have lack of adequate housing for the people. It is important for the government to put it to the proper use for a host of people who don't have, proper houses in Abuja. It is not going to be for free, but at least it can always be made at affordable prices for people who can afford them. This is not going to be for people who will buy to go and now start reselling, because that is what you always have when government
quite a number of the duplexes have not been completed anyway.
Yeah, so it is possible to still actually sell it to people who can go to complete it, or get some partnership with developers who will complete it and then manage it for the effective, both in terms of addressing the shortages in housing and at the same time also revenue generation for government.
What do you think, Mr. Adeniran? What do you think should happen? How should the government handle these properties, these recoveries?
Well, like Larry has said, several people are homeless, but then we don't have enough educational institutions. We don't have enough industrial estate in Nigeria. We have many people that could have been useful to Nigerians that are carried out of Abuja just because they could not afford the rent in the urban center. In fact, many of them were driven to satellite towns in Abuja because they cannot afford the rent near their workplaces. All of these flats and duplexes could be converted to workers' estate, civil service estate, and so on and so forth. And they will be given a mortgage so that they will be able to pay. But then you also know that there are so many universities that are lacking in accommodation for the students. And most students are living off campus. I don't know if it affects the University of Abuja and other government institutions. All of these, duplexes could serve the purpose of hostel accommodation for students, and buses will be provided to ferry them from the hostel estate to wherever they are schooling. It will make things more affordable for them and made it more accessible, so that we have. Then there are so many other, it can be disposed of at a reasonable cost to those who can afford it, and the proceeds be channeled towards the development of the satellite towns around Abuja that have been suffering from inadequate roads, inadequate educational facilities. Of course, I believe that you are aware that in Abuja there are still schools that are being held under trees. That is within the territory, and there are some of the institutions, primary health care institutions, that do not have befitting housing, facilities to accommodate the need of the primary health centers. Then when these duplexes are sold, the proceeds could be channeled towards developing all of the facilities that is needed by those government institutions.
All right.
So basically,
I have one final question for both of you now. One final question. Let me start with you, Mr. Adeniro. How can we stop this from happening? How can we stop this kind of stealing from taking place?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The institutions have to ensure that the law that establishes them is effective. The truth is that no institution can, nobody can develop a property without the approval from government agencies. Then, like EFCC has SCUMOL, Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering. All the professionals are supposed to be registrants under SCUMOL. Nobody could spend such money without informing the law. And once all of these are supervised, the town planners, the accountant general, the tax officials, all of them are supposed to be on the lookout. And if everybody does his own work the way he thought to be done, then nobody will be able to develop such an estate without the knowledge of the law. Now that the law has found that out, some heads should actually roll. Who was it that approved of the construction of the estate? Those who worked there, who did they work for? Did they register with EFCC, SCUMOL? Did they register how did they assess resources which they did that? Some financial institutions must have been involved. Some insurance institutions could have been involved. All of these people should answer. They should have their case. Their days, in court, to ensure that everybody does what is right. If that was done, then the corruption and the financial crimes will have been nipped in the bud.
Let me get your own take, Lanre. How do we stop this kind of stealing from taking place in government institutions? I mean, this is something that went on for a very long time, and it cuts across. We're talking about one institution now, but several institutions. We see this. How do you stop this from happening?
Yeah, it is very important that we always don't stop these at just the individual that is at the center of it. And that is very critical for the anti-corruption agencies. So one, you have the bankers. It is not going to be sufficient that we just have some of these bankers who are assisted in money laundering to serve as prosecution witnesses. No, because if they go back into the system and continue the practice. So the bankers should also be prosecuted for offenses that they commit. That is number one. Number two, they should be reported to their professional association. so that they are either debarred or they are sanctioned, just like you had with the former Accountant General of Auditor General of the Federation, who recently died, who was actually suspended by ICANN for 10 years. This is the kind of thing that we need to see. We need to also see those architectures, workers who are supposed to be seeking approval for the ownership of those properties, in whose name was those property built or architectural design prepared and submitted. Is this for an individual? Is it for a company? Are they legitimately registered? Are they also able to discharge that know your customer and also report appropriately to relevant agencies, including some of those that are builders and the rest of that? And that takes us now to the public procurement process, because the procurement is responsible, as it's been reported, about 70%. The BPP is still seriously, grossly performing below expectation. And that is important that we need to get that also correct. Unfortunately, the presidency, all the while from Yaradua till today, none of them has seen the need to constitute the Council of the Public Procurement. We should have reduced the level of the ability of public officers to use the Federal Executive Council for approval for contracts that were not professionally assessed to determine the true cost of those contracts. And it has to be from the goodwill and the interest of both the president and the leadership of the anti-corruption agencies that there should be new sheriffs in town. And that is the only way. And there shouldn't be any cover for anybody. We can't be having people convicted only for them to be granted pardon. That does not embolden only those who were granted pardon, but even the ones that are looking forward to them or even committing the same atrocities. And it is also important that we have the judicial system to also work in tandem with the Administration of Criminal Justice Act that's also provided for expeditious trial of many of these cases, to not allow for them to use technicalities and other means to frustrate the access to justice.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for your insights. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. I appreciate all your contributions. Thank you very much. Well, that's it on the program. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.